Do you have any questions about SSI, SSDI, or Social Security travel rules? If you do, drop them in the comments right now. I'll be watching closely, and your question may be featured in my next video. Many people think they can take a vacation or move abroad and keep receiving their benefits without interruption. But the truth is, the Social Security Administration has very strict rules, and depending on whether you're on SSI or SSDI, the outcome can be very different. Even the way you handle money overseas through PayPal, wire transfers, or foreign bank accounts can raise questions that affect your benefits. You're watching Social Security Post, the channel that breaks down Social Security in plain language with real facts, numbers, and clear guidance. Today, we'll cover exactly how long you can stay outside the U.S. before SSI is cut off, why SSDI has more flexible but still serious rules, how overseas financial transfers are monitored, and the real statistics on suspensions for extended travel. Stick with me until the end, because I'll also give you a traveler's checklist to make sure you never lose your benefits by accident. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss future updates. Supplemental Security Income, or SSI, is the strictest program when it comes to travel. SSI is a need-based benefit under Title 16, which means it depends not only on disability status, but also on your income, assets, and physical presence in the United States. Under the law, if you're outside the United States for a full calendar month, or for 30 consecutive days, your SSI payments stop. That United States definition only covers the 50 states, the District of Columbia, and the Northern Mariana Islands. It does not include Puerto Rico, Guam, or the U.S. Virgin Islands, so if you move there and rely on SSI, payments will stop. To get SSI reinstated, you must return to the U.S. and be physically present for 30 straight days before payments restart. SSDI, or Social Security Disability Insurance, is very different because it is funded by payroll taxes rather than need-based rules. If you are a U.S. citizen, you can generally keep receiving SSDI while living abroad, even for years, as long as you're in a country where SSA is allowed to send payments. Non-citizens, however, face the alien non-payment provision. This says that if a non-citizen leaves the U.S. for more than 6 months in a row, their SSDI can be suspended unless they qualify for an exception, such as having lived in the U.S. for a certain number of years or living in a country that has a Social Security agreement with the United States. Understanding this split is critical. SSI has a 30-day cutoff. SSDI has a 6-month clock, but only for non-citizens. For SSI, the restart rules can cause long delays if you're not careful. Let's say you left on May 15th and returned on June 20th. Even though that's just over 30 days, the fact that you crossed 2 calendar months means your SSI will be suspended for both May and June. Once you're back, the suspension doesn't lift immediately. You must remain in the U.S. for 30 full consecutive days before payments can resume. That means a short overseas trip can turn into 2 or even 3 months without SSI payments if you miscalculate your travel dates. For people relying on SSI as their only income, that gap can be devastating. SSDI works differently. If you are a U.S. citizen, payments typically continue uninterrupted, even if you're gone for more than 30 days. The main exception is if you're living in or traveling to a country where the SSA cannot legally send payments, such as Cuba or North Korea, or where payments are restricted. In those cases, your SSDI is withheld until you move to a country where payments are allowed. Non-citizens face the additional rule. If they remain outside the U.S. for more than 6 months, SSDI will stop until they meet residency requirements or exceptions. So, while SSI is strict with short trips, SSDI can appear more flexible, but there are still significant country-specific traps. If you're living outside the United States and receiving SSDI or retirement benefits, you may be sent the Foreign Enforcement Questionnaire, also known as SSA 7162 or SSA 7161. This form is essentially SSA's way of confirming that you are still alive, still eligible, and haven't changed your situation in a way that affects your benefits. It is mailed every year to certain beneficiaries, usually in countries where SSA has seen more fraud or where data exchange is limited. If you fail to return the form within 60 days, your benefits can be suspended. Suspension often occurs automatically each January for people who ignored the questionnaire. Many of the suspensions abroad are not due to fraud, but simply to lost mail or missed deadlines. The good news is that if you return the form, even after suspension, payments can usually be reinstated retroactively. However, if you are overseas, you may need to deal with a U.S. embassy or a foreign benefits unit to get the process moving. It's one more example of how paperwork and timing, not just eligibility, can affect whether you receive your benefits on time. The numbers show how common travel-related suspensions are, especially for SSI. In 2019, more than 30,000 suspensions were issued because recipients were outside the United States too long. In 2021, during the pandemic when fewer people traveled, the number dropped to about 20,000 suspensions. But by 2022, the figure climbed again to over 25,000 suspensions. That means nearly 25,000 individuals lost SSI payments for at least a period of time simply because they traveled or stayed abroad too long. These statistics make it clear that SSA closely monitors residency and presence requirements. They cross-check with border records, and the Office of Inspector General has issued reports showing that SSI payments have been wrongly made to recipients who are living overseas. These reports have led to stricter monitoring, and it means that travel suspensions are not just a theoretical risk. They are happening every year to tens of thousands of beneficiaries. That's why it's essential to plan your travel with SSA's rules in mind. Many people worry that if they use PayPal overseas or wire money to another country, the Social Security Administration is watching in real time. That's not how it works. Banks and services like PayPal must comply with the Bank Secrecy Act, which requires them to report suspicious transactions to the U.S. Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, known as FinCEN. These reports are called suspicious activity reports, and while you won't be told if one is filed, they can end up in government databases used by agencies to detect fraud. For SSI, financial activity can matter because it is a need-based program. If you transfer money in ways that push your countable resources over the $2,000 individual limit, that can trigger a suspension. SSA also uses something called the Access to Financial Institutions Program, which checks U.S. bank balances directly to verify resource levels for SSI. This system does not track PayPal or foreign banks in real time, but if large transfers are discovered in an audit, they could raise questions. SSDI is different. It does not have resource limits, so financial transfers do not directly affect eligibility. But taxes, reporting, and compliance with IRS rules like the $10,000 FBR threshold still matter, and failing to follow them could cause trouble indirectly. For U.S. citizens, SSDI benefits can be deposited into foreign banks through a system called International Direct Deposit. SSA has agreements with dozens of countries where this works smoothly, so you don't need a U.S. account to keep getting your money. All you need is to provide your foreign bank information and keep your address current with SSA. But if you don't update your contact information, mail like the Foreign Enforcement Questionnaire may not reach you, and that can lead to suspensions, even if you're otherwise eligible. There are also country restrictions. Payments cannot be sent to countries like Cuba or North Korea, and in other places, such as parts of Central Asia, payments are restricted unless you meet very specific exceptions. That means if you move without checking SSA's payments abroad tool first, you could find your SSDI frozen. For non-citizens, the 6-month alien non-payment rule also applies. So, planning your residency and travel is essential to avoid interruptions. Here's an SSI example. A person leaves the US on May 1st and returns on June 2nd. That's 32 days abroad, so their SSI stops for the month of May and does not restart until they've been back in the US for 30 full consecutive days. That means no payment for June either, and possibly not until late July, depending on when they notify SSA. Now, in SSDI scenario, a US citizen moves to Spain permanently. Their SSDI continues uninterrupted as long as they complete and return the Foreign Enforcement Questionnaire each year. But imagine a non-citizen dependent who leaves for more than 6 months without an exception. Their SSDI will stop. These examples show how SSI and SSDI rules are applied differently, but both can leave you without income if you don't plan ahead. Before you travel, check SSA's Payments Abroad tool to confirm whether your country is eligible for SSDI payments. If you're on SSI, reconsider any trip longer than 30 days. Make sure your mail will be forwarded and that someone can alert you if SSA sends the Foreign Enforcement Questionnaire. Don't forget that Puerto Rico, Guam, and the U.S. Virgin Islands do not count for SSI, so traveling there has the same effect as traveling overseas. While you're away, keep your resources under SSI limits. Keep track of your travel dates, and don't ignore embassy or SSA notices about required forms. When you return, if your SSI was suspended, mark every day you're back until you hit 30 consecutive days, and then contact SSA to get reinstated. Following this checklist can save you from losing months of benefits by mistake. One of the biggest myths is that SSA is directly monitoring your PayPal account or every wire you send. That is false. Financial monitoring is done through banking regulations, IRS reporting, and SSA's Access to Financial Institutions program, which only checks U.S. bank balances for SSI. Another myth is that SSDI always stops when you leave the country. In reality, U.S. citizens can live abroad in most countries and keep SSDI payments, but paperwork and restrictions still apply. Another common misunderstanding is that Puerto Rico counts as part of the U.S. for SSI. That's not true. SSI is not paid in Puerto Rico, Guam, or the U.S. Virgin Islands. Only the Northern Mariana Islands count. Busting these myths is important so people don't make financial or travel decisions based on misinformation. If your SSDI or retirement benefits are suspended because you missed the Foreign Enforcement Questionnaire, complete the form immediately and contact SSA or your nearest U.S. embassy. Payments can usually be reinstated retroactively once the paperwork is received. If your SSI was suspended because you traveled too long, the only solution is to return to the U.S. and stay for 30 consecutive days before requesting reinstatement. Document your travel dates with entry stamps, tickets, or other proof to make the process smoother. The key is to act quickly. Many people delay contacting SSA, which only makes suspensions last longer. If you address the issue promptly, in most cases, benefits can be restarted, but waiting can turn a temporary stop into a long financial crisis. Knowing the rules ahead of time and acting fast if something goes wrong can save you months of hardship. So here's the bottom line. SSI follows the 30-day rule, SSDI follows citizenship and 6-month rules, and both are tightly connected to paperwork like the Foreign Enforcement Questionnaire. Your financial transfers are not tracked in real time by SSA, but they can matter for SSI eligibility if your resources go over the limit. Travel suspensions are not rare. They happen to tens of thousands of people every year. If this video helped you, make sure to like and subscribe to Social Security Post. And remember, I want to hear from you. Do you have a question about your own travel plans, residency, or overseas banking while on SSI or SSDI? Drop it in the comments. I'll be reviewing them all and may feature your question in the next update.